Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We just got only 17, 18 participants. So what we're going to do today, so I just get started 6 minutes late now. So the rest can join afterwards. So what we're going to do while we're waiting, so I have attended the writing workshops yesterday, and the 3 video presentation I want to share with you about the literature review and contribution. So what happened for your research? You have to think about it about contribution. So I have been invited to be a thesis examiner in Indonesia. So that 2 things you have to remember about your research. Think about it about contribution. Contribution, there are 2 things in your research. Is the first one is to the body of knowledge, and the second one, contribution to the practitioners or to the government or to the industry, right? So there are 2 videos, 3 videos in total, but you need to take a note for the video for you to practice and to implement that when you do writing literature, writing the contribution in your thesis, in your paper. Now, that's last week we did not do presentation about your homework, but I'm still waiting for the presentation. So after watching and listening to the video presentation, I want at least 1 or 2 group doing presentation today, right? So today is the second last, so Ibu Kokom. So next week will be the final day for this visiting professor at your uni. So I really need that next week. So I just need to have more summary what we have learned in the past 7 and 8 weeks. Okay, so and also, of course, everybody want to work with me to work on your paper, to work on your research thesis or dissertation. So I just maybe ask Ibu Kokom be able to share about my WhatsApp or my detail to you. So you'll be able to talk to me and to discuss with me about your research. Okay, so this is a very important. So we got Ibu Murni, like Ibu Riris, Widya Stuti, yes. So this you got opportunity to share, right? And to do presentation about your topic, about your abstract, because last week, you know, we did not get a lot of participants attending my session. Okay, yeah, Bu Kokom. So to this week and next week, yes, it's all right, Bu Kokom. So next week is the final week, isn't it? I believe. Or we still have 1 more, or just next week is the last one. Terakhir ya, next week ya, Bu Kokom.
Yeah.
So next week is, I really need everybody must attend, because next week is a lot more reflection, Q&A, as well as assessment. I just need to see about your plan, about your thesis writing, your academic journal writing, because next week I really need to know about what your plan as well. Okay. So I still have working with Ibu Kokom. So still, you know, at least once a week, we still communicate with Ibu Kokom for your research, for our research collaboration, Bu Kokom, you know, for the paper. But I really want that, you know, with UNY, so we have paper in Q1, Ibu Kokom. So like Ibu Kokom shared your abstract last week, it's I can see that, you know, that paper very good, Ibu Kokom. Your research very good in terms of the abstract writing is more informative. So if Ibu Kokom has paper in full, then I can give you some good input and feedback. So we can submit actually by the end of this month, okay? If the paper is ready, okay? I'm sure his paper is ready because I can read that the abstract is already completed the research. You got data, you got finding, right? Is it about, last week, isn't it, about interview, right? So last week we learned about en vivo. Did you remember en vivo? About, if you look at the map, any finding from the interview, so we can do en vivo. So today, everybody in this room, but if you're not, then you can ask your friend to join. So I just want to give you one video. So about how to think about research contribution with your research paper. So please take your time to listen from him. He's one of professor, very good professor, to share with us about the research contribution with your research paper. Okay, so please take a note and listen to him.
Hello all, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video I'm going to talk to you about how to think about research contributions. So if you don't know me, I'm an Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and I created this whole Reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There are so many people that helped me out that I wanted to pay the favor forward and help you out as much as I can. So I created this sharing economy editing platform. You can check that out. That's what reciprocity.com is about. And I do all these YouTube videos. All right. So in terms of thinking about research contributions, there's really 2 ways that most of us think about research contributions. And I want to argue that there's maybe a 3rd way that you should think about research contributions. So if you don't know what I'm doing right now, I'm actually in the Gulf of Mexico at this little town called Destin, Florida. It's kind of a little resort town that's fairly close to where I live. And we decided to do a weekend getaway. And this morning I decided to go for a jog. It's my first morning here. I wanted to go out onto the beach, and I wanted to show you some of the sort of cool stuff that's out here. So there's really 2 ways that most of us think about research contributions, and I think about it in this sort of way as well. But I've had to think about the 3rd way a little bit more as I've sort of matured in myself and field. I still don't consider myself in any sort of way mature, but I'm on my way. All right, so in terms of thinking about these research contributions, often many of us think about us as being part of a torrent or a stream of research, right? So I'm going to show you that right now. Hopefully you can see it. I'm going to rotate the phone, and you can see this torrent coming down from up here off of the land. It's coming down, going into the ocean. It's coming from some brackish water, I believe, that's out there. So, or maybe it's a spring that's out there, I'm not quite sure. But most of us think that we contribute to some sort of research stream, right? So we're part of a research stream, and we try to contribute within those different research streams. You can see it's fairly narrow in terms of our contributions that we're giving, and it's moving really quickly. It's changed very quickly in terms of that research stream, and that's a very good analogy to think about the different research streams that you might contribute to on a research paper, a research article, or even your career, that things change very quickly. It's usually a really small and narrow stream of research that doesn't necessarily have a lot of impact, right? So if you look at the sort of wider stance here, I apologize if the sun's in your eyes, but it's really pretty beautiful out here, right? So you can see that it doesn't contribute to the whole greater scheme of science or education or whatever, social sciences, whatever stream that you're doing your research in. And that's okay. That's really a big part of science, is contributing to these tiny little research streams that kind of narrowly flow.
How to kill all mosquitoes in the area in 90 seconds. This simple but brilliant trick you can do tonight to eliminate all mosquitoes.
Narrowly flow, you can see that they don't necessarily have a straight and narrow path. right? And this is caused by people going in one particular direction, just like here. What's happening with this research stream, I'm going to move up here a little bit more and show you, is that I'm going to call it a research stream. So what is happening is that a little grains of salt, or maybe it's a little defect that's happening, maybe a little stone or something, narrowly pushes the stream in one direction, and then all of a sudden the stream starts going the other direction. Just like with thoughts. I apologize, my hand was in the way. So just like with thoughts, or somebody has some sort of interesting idea, it gets pulled in one direction, and there's not really a rhyme and reason for it. Somebody has an interesting idea, and we get pulled in that one direction. We kind of go in that direction, and that is a normal trajectory that happens. And then it kind of self-corrects because people think, well, yeah, that didn't quite work. Maybe we should go in a different direction. We start going in a different direction. It's a lot of what science is about. It's kind of like a wandering stream that happens. And you should be contributing to those tiny little research streams. That's kind of normal in terms of what we do. It's kind of called normal science, right? Like most of us do that kind of stuff. And then there's another kind of science that we often think about. This is more of the breakthrough science, radical change that happens. We think of the larger waves that happen, right? So there often is, and this analogy actually makes a lot of sense out here. That's successive waves, and it's slowly changing the beach as we get these successive waves. So somebody has a really brilliant, interesting idea. It changes the landscape quite dramatically. If there's a large wave that comes in, that's 20 feet high, it completely changes the landscape, and all of a sudden everybody has to scramble to figure out what's going on. Just like on a beach, just out in Destin, Florida, there's a big wave that comes in that's 20 feet high. It completely changes everything. We have to, and all of the creatures and the people and people that live on the beach and stuff like that have to scramble to figure out what to do now, right? And so that's kind of very similar to what happens in the state of science. So here's the thing, if you can see here, that most of the waves that we have are really tiny. They don't make a lot of difference, and they're pretty important, but they're not necessarily all that important. So that's most of the stuff that we do is going to be relatively unimportant, and that's where I want you to think about the third wave. The third way to think about your research impact is not necessarily about the big waves, right? So I want you to think about, well, where do these waves start? How do things change, and where do all these new ideas come from? I want you to think about way out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, or way out into the Atlantic, or wherever you are. I want you to think about that there's usually a little tiny wind, or maybe it's a little tiny ripple that happens in the water. And what happens is that little tiny bit of wind blows across the ocean, and it slowly blows across the ocean, and it makes the waves get bigger and bigger and bigger. And as the molecules in the waves are crashing towards each other, the waves get successively bigger, and the ripples get bigger and bigger as we move. And as the wind sort of picks up from the different, the heat currents and all that kind of stuff that's happening in the air, it picks up the waves and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the way that I want you to think about doing research contributions, is that you're someplace out into the ocean, and you're really in the middle of nowhere, right? So you're really stranded on a little tiny raft, and it's your job being out on that tiny little raft, and that you have to create that little wave. And so the way that you do that, how do you do that? I mean, it seems like an extraordinary task, right? Well, you get on the side of your little raft and you start blowing in the water. That's all it takes. It might take a little bit of time, right? You start blowing in the water, and you keep blowing and blowing and blowing. And eventually it starts creating a little bit more ripples, more ripples, more ripples. And hopefully you have some extraordinary outside events that happen, right, that help you pick up steam and blow the wind in the right direction, the waves in the right direction. There's often that happens, a lot of luck and exogenous or outside sort of factors that happen. And we think it's ourselves, but it's often sort of outside things that happen that drive the different forces. And then as you're blowing and you're writing, you're making these little tiny research contributions, it picks up steam a little bit. And eventually, once it hits the beach, you have a little bit of a wave and you're making the impact. It takes a long time before that actually happens, but it does have an impact eventually. So that's the way that I want you to think about science. I know it seems a little bit more, it's it seems far-fetched, it seems extraordinary, it seems like it's, this is daunting, you know, why am I ever going to do anything like this? But, you know, that's a lot of science. It's a lot of small, tiny, little steps, just like everything in life, right? So I want you to think about life in this way as well. You don't get rich overnight. Most of us don't. That's pretty extraordinary. You know, you don't lose weight overnight. Most of us don't. That's really extraordinary. You don't get famous overnight. That's really extraordinary if that happens. And oftentimes a lot of those effects, they disappear very quickly. So instead, what I want you to think about is gradually growing and developing as a person, as a researcher, as a human being, and keep pushing towards building a little bit larger waves. Hopefully what happens is that as you're doing this, somebody picks up and notices that you're doing something weird, right? And they're like, why is this person doing that kind of thing? And then they start joining you and they start participating in that. And they themselves start pushing and blowing in the water. And that creates a little bit of a larger wave. And then hopefully if you have more and more people, just like wind, right? As you get more and more wind, the waves start getting bigger and bigger and you have larger contributions. So I want you to think, instead of thinking of research streams, which is really important, or, you know, creating large waves, I want you to think about creating small things and doing small things and really sort of reining in your ambitions at the beginning and have a sort of long-term journey or long-term perspective, but just have that little tiny focus on doing your one little tiny thing. And eventually what ends up happening is the idea gets picked up by other people. Maybe they read it. Maybe they never cite your paper, but they've read it. Somebody is going to have their mind changed from that. Enough people have their mind changed. You can get an extraordinary, interesting way. You can change science pretty dramatically by doing that. And what I've seen is that's the way that most science is done. It's usually a tiny little article that people thought, well, that's pretty interesting, that's neat. And then it grows and develops and changes a whole domain or a whole discipline very quickly. Or maybe it takes a long time, right? It takes an extraordinary long time that the change happens, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, it seems like it's happened fairly quickly. So that's what I want you to think about in terms of these research contributions. Think of the research stream, try to participate in the research stream as well.
Okay, so any thought about the research contributions? Any thought about research contribution, research stream? So I think Kokom mentioned in the our class session, we got Boga, you know, the entrepreneur, fashion, beauty, etc. Yeah. So this is what we call stream. That research stream, research in the area of domain. So the research contribution, what he mentioned, he give us the illustration, right? If he's somewhere in the ocean, for example, so you can just learn what he mentioned about the research contribution, thinking about small thing for your research, and how you just write that and translate into that your research. Okay. Now I still have one more. This is a very good one for you to be able to listen. So please take notes. Yeah. Especially its contribution to knowledge and originality. Okay. So in your thesis. Okay. So please take notes and you'll be able to listen.
On contribution to knowledge and originality in a doctoral dissertation. My name is Cecile Badenhorst, and I'm in the Faculty of Education at Memorial University. Just a note that I have many other videos on research writing, thesis writing, dissertation writing, and a number of videos on writing the literature review chapter. Please have a look out for those.
Okay, so Cecil actually published in that video presentation different types of session. She amazing scholar to share with us, write the literature, and this now write in the contribution to the body of knowledge and originality. So even for me and Ibu Kokom and the rest of us, we need to understand whatever we write, thesis, paper, dissertation in S2, S3, we need to understand how we write that contribution to the body of knowledge and in terms of novelty, originality. Yes? So please take a moment to listen, okay?
The purpose of this video is to explain for doctoral writers what contribution to knowledge and originality in a thesis is. Now, of course, you're all in different disciplines and departments, so you would need to find out from your department or discipline what examiners want to see. I'm going to talk generally, and really what I'm doing is giving you ideas of things that you can think about in order to pull this out in your thesis. So the purpose of the video is to go through what is originality, what does contribution to knowledge mean, how does one justify originality and contribution to knowledge, and how is it written up in a thesis. And these questions come from somebody who made a comment in the comment box, and I'm sorry I've forgotten your name, but these were your questions and I'm going to answer them now. So usually people start thinking about originality at the end of their thesis. And this is when the supervisor or your committee will say, well, you need to show your contribution. And at that point, you're exhausted, you have thesis fatigue, and you are so tired of this project and you think, I don't think I've made any contribution at all. You feel like it's all been done by somebody else and it's all been done much better. But really, this is because you are at this end point and it's difficult for you to see something new. And it's often really useful to get a new viewpoint, to get somebody else who hasn't seen your thesis to tell you what is good about it, because at that point you might not see it. But originality and contribution to knowledge doesn't mean that your thesis has to present something totally innovative or something that's previously unknown or completely groundbreaking. Really, we're talking about, along a continuum, increments of originality. But one of the key things that I want to show you in here is that often what doctoral writers do is they assume that the reader will be able to see the relevance. So often they know what the relevance and the originality is, but they don't state it explicitly because they feel that it should be obvious to everyone. But it really isn't obvious to everyone, and you have to articulate it. You have to articulate it in a way that may seem to you are repeating yourself or you are blowing your own horn, right? You're being, I don't know how to express it, but you really do have to be quite strong in the articulation of your contribution to knowledge, because that your reader won't see it unless you point it out. So I'm going to show you a number of ways that you can think about your contribution, originality, and your contribution to knowledge. So where the number is, there'll be a range, a theme, let's say. But what I really think you should do is, in your thesis, think about something you can say about each of these themes. Now, with some topics, some of the themes will be more important than others. But when you are finishing off your thesis and you want to really work on this, go through each of these themes and say to yourself, well, what have I contributed in terms of this particular theme? So the first one is a conceptual or a theoretical contribution. So have you done something theoretically or conceptually that is slightly new, slightly different, adding to the literature? Maybe you've adapted a conceptual framework or you've developed a new one. Maybe you've just used a conceptual framework in a new context, Maybe you are applying a theory in a way that hasn't been applied before. So it doesn't have to be a huge thing, it can be a slight thing, but you need to think about it and then think about how you can write that up. Knowledge gap contributions. So have you advanced thinking in your field in some way? It doesn't have to be huge again. Have you carried an argument further? Have you developed new insights, added to someone else's thinking? So go back to your knowledge gap and show how you've filled that gap. Perhaps you've taken this research to a new cohort or a new context. Methodological contributions. Have you used unique or unusual methods or adapted existing research methods in a new way? Perhaps instead of just doing one methodology, you've used a number of different methods, and that's a contribution because you've combined these methods in this particular context. Maybe you've used a known material or issue in new ways, or you're applying, old ideas in a new context. Maybe your data sources are original in some way. But think about how you can write about your methodological contribution. Now, unexpected results is something that I find that most people will think about, but it's worth having, a section on unexpected results, things that didn't turn out the way you expected, or something that maybe has changed your thinking. So as a researcher, has something happened in the research process that you can comment on, and maybe that will be a contribution to knowledge as well. The significance of your conclusions. Now, generally people do this one really well, and this is what they focus on when it comes to finding a contribution. But what I'm saying is that all the other components, the theory, the methodology, the knowledge gap, all of those can also be contributions. When it comes to the significance of your conclusions, again, you have to articulate the significance of them. And there are several ways that you can do this. So once you've done the analysis, you will develop close findings. Those close findings can be significant, as well as the conclusions that you draw later on. Those conclusions can be contributions too. So there are two sets of conclusions, the close findings, as well as the bigger meta conclusions that you draw about the study as a whole. And each of those can be separate contributions to knowledge. And new knowledge could also mean that you are integrating things in a particular way, or you're adding, adapting, or even creating something. And again, it doesn't have to be all new, and it doesn't have to be totally original. So I guess you have to be quite innovative in the way you think about this. So when it comes to your meta conclusions, this is where you also have to, this is your contribution, this is your substantive contribution. And it's often a forgotten part of the thesis, the meta conclusion. So these are not your close findings, but this is where you take a step back and you say, okay, now that I've done this study, what does it mean? And what I say to my students is just find 3 conclusions. And initially they're saying to me, well, I can't think of anything. But the more you think about it, the more you'll be able to come up with 3 things that you can now say now that you've done this study. And then you might want to have a section where you evaluate the research project. And this is, often people will have a limitation section. But what this is about really is what worked and what didn't work, and what would you do differently. And that can be a contribution to knowledge. So, if you learned a huge amount in the research process because things didn't work out, then that can be a big contribution to future research. So you don't want to undermine your study and to say this was a waste of time, but you want to say, now that I've done this, what I would do differently is X, Y, and Z, and that would yield, other results. And that understanding is really important for future research. Then you could also have policy or practice, real world, that's what I'm talking about, is now the real world contributions. So recommendations, policies, practice, or recommendations for practice or policy. If this is part of your research and you're in a field where you can do this, then this can be a significant part of your contribution as well. You could be recommending changes in practice, changes in policy. So that could be a significant contribution, and you have to articulate that. So where do we write about originality and contribution to knowledge in the thesis or dissertation? Well, my argument would be that you do this right from the beginning, when you articulate your problem, purpose statement, and questions. So it begins with the articulation of the problem. The more you write that problem as being in dire need of being researched, the more you'll be able to say this was a worthwhile project. So you have to describe that problem as something that is really, worthwhile researching, something that we really need to know about. And if you can describe it like that, then when you talk about it later on in your thesis, it's much easier to talk about the contribution. Similarly, the knowledge gap. So the research problem is the real world problem, and the knowledge gap is the academic problem. So the knowledge gap is usually, what the research doesn't know, what the body of research, what researchers generally don't know about this topic. And it could be, they don't know about this cohort or this context or this particular issue or this material or whatever it is. If you've articulated it as a significant knowledge gap, then when you come to your final conclusion, you'll be able to say this was a contribution because it was a significant knowledge gap. So you would find this articulation in the introduction chapter. These components would be in place in the introduction chapter, where you really emphasize the need for this research in terms of the real world and problems, and also in terms of scholarly work. Then the next thing I would argue is that we develop our contribution all the way through the thesis, and we do this through our conclusions. So in the conclusions to sections within a chapter, that's where you're making sense of things for the reader, and you can pull out significance in those sections. But the conclusion to a chapter, so, I'm always saying to students, you must have a conclusion to a chapter. And at that point, they're saying, why? I've just finished this chapter, I want to move on. Why do I have to go over it again? But you need to think like a reader. A reader wants to know at the end of that chapter, what does this mean? And you need to use those conclusions to really pull together. I've told you all of this, but what you need to take from it is this, this, and this. This is the significance of this chapter. So things like, in the study, I intend to extend this argument. That's explicitly saying, this is an important argument and I'm taking it further. So chapter conclusions play a really important role for developing your argument, for showing significance of each chapter, but also of building significance all the way through the thesis. And honestly, you need to make the most of them. Conclusions are where you review the key points of the chapter, but you review them in a way that you are consolidating for the reader the most important things and the significance. So in this way, you're building that contribution all the way through the thesis. So pay attention to your conclusions. Then, of course, in the discussion and conclusion chapter, this is where you really press home your contribution to knowledge. And I'm just going to take you through a very brief overview of a chapter. You don't have to follow this, but what I'm saying is look at where I'm kind of emphasizing things here. So you would have an introduction section, and this is where you remind your reader of the problem and the purpose. And again, you can articulate the problem in a way that we really needed to research this. Then have an overview of your study, and this is what you've done up to this point in the study. And this just briefly reminds the reader of why you undertook this endeavor. Then you might have a section where you address the research questions. You don't have to provide solutions because you may not have come up with solutions, but you need to address the research questions. And here you pull together the findings from your data analysis to respond to the research questions. So because you had research questions at the beginning of the project, your readers expecting you to somehow address them in whatever way. And doing them explicitly really helps your reader to see that you've addressed those questions. So I suggest to my students that they have the question as a heading, and then they unpack the findings, and they go back to the literature, and they say, how similar were these findings, how different, how have I contributed to closing that knowledge gap? So it doesn't have to be huge, it's degrees of difference, but addressing the research questions also helps to build your contribution. And then, of course, developing and discussing the meta-conclusions to the study. And again, I'm suggesting 3. So this is where you take a step back. You say, I did this whole study. I came up with these findings. These findings are really significant because of whatever reason. But now that I've done the study, what does this mean? What does this mean for, this issue, my practice? What does it mean for, I've made this argument. Why was this argument important? So it's that kind of abstraction of your results to meta-conclusions. I hope I'm explaining that properly. And then, of course, actually have a section called Significance and Implications with a heading like that. And this is where you really pull out for your readers what the significance and the implications are of your study. And this is where you could say methodological significance, theoretical significance. You may have already covered the others, but this is where you could pull out some of those other contributions that you're making. And then implications for practice. So if this is something that you're going to do, when you give your recommendations, don't just say, this is what I'm recommending. You say it's really important that this gets done, or that gets done, or this changes, so that you're showing the significance as well. So you would also have a conclusion to the discussion and conclusion chapter. And again, you want to make the most of it, pull together the main points, have a key message of the thesis, right? So that your reader is left with the key message of the thesis. So you don't have to use the headings I've used here, and you may have additional sections. But what I want you to take from this is how you articulate your contribution through these different sections. And just a couple of points about writing specifically. So you want to be explicit about the significance. Don't hide it and then hope your reader will read it. So you want sentences like the contribution of the study, the significance of this research, the study adds to the literature in this way. But even though I'm telling you to really promote your study, I'm not saying that you need to make unsubstantial claims. What I'm saying is that you must base it on what you've done and on the research and on the literature. So if you are, articulating a research problem, you don't want to make unsubstantiated claims. The same with the knowledge gap or even your conclusions. You're always grounding it in the evidence of the study, of, the literature, of your results, and making the most of it. So Phillips and Pugh had some really interesting comments, and I'm just going to go through them really quickly. These are just ideas. Some of them may be more useful for you because of your particular discipline, and others won't be relevant at all. But I think it's worthwhile just going through them, and maybe they'll generate new ideas for you about how you can articulate your contribution. Setting down a major piece of new information in writing for a first time, continuing a previously original piece of work. So you don't have to start something. You can add to it. Carrying out original work designed by a supervisor. So although you haven't developed the project, the work is original because it was developed in an original way by someone else. Providing a single original technique, observation, or result in an otherwise unoriginal, competent piece of research. So it doesn't have to be everything in your project that's original. It could just be one thing that you're contributing. Having many original ideas, methods, and interpretations, and this could be a team project, under your direction, but it's still an original contribution. Showing originality and testing somebody else's idea, using a methodology, using a particular research question that's coming from another study, those can all contribute as well. Carrying out empirical work that hasn't been done before, making a synthesis that hasn't been done before, using already known material but with a new interpretation, trying out something in one context that has only been done in other contexts before, taking a particular technique and applying it in a new area, and bringing new evidence to bear on an old issue. Being cross-disciplinary and using different methodologies, so anything cross-disciplinary can provide new insight. Looking at areas that people in the discipline hadn't looked at before, adding to knowledge in a way that hasn't been done before. But often people will say to me, but actually my study didn't yield anything new at all. And, you know, if your results failed and you didn't get what you expected and you feel that you really didn't contribute anything in terms of the research results, right? The results didn't yield anything new. That in itself is interesting and useful. Because that could be research that confirms other results, or it's research that you could comment on and say needs to be changed and developed in particular ways. So you just need to think creatively about how you will articulate this contribution. Now, I'm totally convinced that after doing, you know, a 60,000 to 100,000 word thesis, you will definitely have contributed in some way. It's just a matter of finding it and finding how to write about it. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope it provided you with something useful. I hope I wasn't too confusing. And please look out for my other videos on...
Bagus nih.
Bagus nggak itu rekan-rekan?
Bu Dewi, silakan. Bagus sekali.
Gimana? Ada komen?
Oke, Mbak Dewi nih.
Yeah,
Mbak Dewi.
may I?
Bu Dewi.
May I just?
Yeah, Bu Dewi. Sorry, Bu Dewi.
May I just talk about my thoughts regarding the video? So, thank you very much, Dr. Ferry Jie. This is my first time joining this class. I'm a PhD student right now.
Yes, yes.
That year, and then now it's time for me to wrap up my findings, which is very difficult. Just mess up with
jadi masak itu mau dinner.
Mess up and all is like, yeah, anywhere, everywhere. I cannot organize it well. So this video is very inspiring because it highlights how to present the findings, how to pinpoint the contribution to knowledge, contribution to the practical. For me, this is very challenging. And then in the video, yes, all is right. The steps is very useful, but I would like to hear, maybe you have your own perspective, your own experience in how to find what is actually the contribution of your thesis to the community, for example, to the literature review or any, because for me, I don't think that my research is so much useful. That my research is not a new one, and then this is not really good in terms of contribution to the knowledge. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. I think in regard to your research, right, I'm not aware. So for your topic, for your research, so it depends on what topic you bring up, you know, for your dissertation. That's number one. Number two, typically, if the contribution, there are two mains actually mentioned about to the body of knowledge as well as practitioners, right? So if you have the contribution, the literature, or for each element for the dissertation, it's not something for the examiners they're looking for. So in the thesis, dissertation, or journal article, you need to wrap up what contributions to the body of knowledge as well as, or what we call theoretical contribution or practical contributions. Okay, so that is what we call the contributions. So it does not really matter, I think she mentioned, if you it's nothing dealing with the innovative research. Okay, so different types of topics, different types of contribution, different types of topic, different types of I think what we call novelty, right? So the level of innovative research, it depends on the examiner, the assessors, you know, reading your research or expertise in your particular research. So they can judge for that. So it's people outside your area, so they're not able to judge, because that's why when we ask the thesis or dissertation examiners must be expert in that field, what you're doing research. For example, my doctorate degree student, two of them, they're about to submit their thesis. This is the first thing for me. I have to find out 3 examiners. So one examiner, 3 of them must be related into the main topic. Looking at the title, looking at the abstract, looking at the keywords, and the person definitely expert in the methodology. One person expert in the main topic of the research. And one of the person may be expert in that field of the industry knowledge, or maybe expert in the theoretical contributions lens, for example. So in order to answer your question, so I think the top is from topic to different topics, slightly different. People can judge anything in the paper, in the article, whether or not you have contribution. Even though you have written contribution in your article, people still arguing, right? So this is starting for debates, and this is starting for arguments, right? In terms of the contribution. So if you listen to the first presenter, associate professor, entrepreneur, he also mentioned about the research stream, right? And research contribution. So the second presenter, she went through very well, very precisely the way she wrote, how you write the contribution, how you write, you know, even research question, etc. Very, very useful. So I'm more than happy to send you all the link from her presentation. So you'll be able to listen again, and you'll be able to listen some other topics, right? Because she mentions, I think she got more than 5 different YouTube, you know, talking about literature review, talking about theoretical contribution, talking about proposal, etc. Okay. So I think that's something my comments, my response to Ibu Dewi, right? So for your dissertation as a 3rd year, I know that how you make sure, I'm sure actually your promoter will be able to help you in terms of the topic, what you do. But I'm more than happy to relook at your dissertation, the topic, etc. Right? So whether or not actually is that something correct, or is there already the contributions for your research? Okay. All right. So, any question before we start? But I still have one more video about the literature review. But if you be able to look at the literature reviews are very, very good in terms from the SAGE research methods. So I think I sent to you book Kokom, right? Book Kokom, that one for the video link. So you'll be able to share. I can maybe send it to you now in the chatting box. Yeah?
Okay.
Yes, book Kokom.
Oh iya.
Can send it to you. So make sure everybody can see.
Bisa kok.
Bisa book Kokom.
Bisa.
Yeah.
Coba.
Okay. I can send you now that two good video, what you have seen. Can you see there?
Yeah. Oh.
Selama gap year ini, aku banyak menggunakan Grammarly untuk menulis personal statement yang nanti akan aku gunakan untuk mendaftar kuliah. Grammarly juga cocok bagi teman-teman yang banyak dapat tugas bahasa Inggris atau pengen daftar ke opportunities pemuda seperti lomba, mentorship, dan sebagainya yang butuh banyak dokumen yang ditulis dengan bahasa Inggris. Versi gratis
My name is Eric Jensen. I'm a sociology professor at the University of Warwick.
And I'm Charles Lowry. I'm Director of Research at Verus Maplecroft.
Now we're going to talk about literature reviews, how you write a literature review and develop it so that you can use it for setting up your research project as a good foundation. So the first point.
Yeah, so what's happening? Everybody can see. Maybe I can send you the video. Anyone can check whether everybody can set, because this is a very, very good one, the last bit. Maybe Ibu Murni or who else, Ibu Riris, anyone can try with the last link. Is that it works?
Mau nyoba Bu Riris yang kemarin itu mungkin?
Bisa.
Dr. Ferry, do you mean the last link that you sent in the chat box?
Yes.
Yes, it worked. It
works.
works.
Are you able to share? Maybe got a problem with my connection.
Oh,
Yeah,
share. Because I use handphone.
Oh, use handphone. Maybe anyone who's the host be able to share, then we can listen, because
Okay.
this is literature review very important for all of us.
Mbak Mami bisa?
From Sage, Ibu Mami, yeah, from Sage Publisher.
Baik, sebentar.
Yeah, because I was attending the workshop, so I would like to share three of you. Looks like, wow, very important to me, and also including you all, especially to you and Ye, yeah.
Review. Video, ya.
Oke, sudah Bu Riris, saya jadikan co-host.
Ya.
Bisa di-share ya. Share screen.
Sama Ibu, kok aku habis ya?
Still problem, yeah? Okay. Maybe I send you the link, yeah? So everybody can listen in your own time. And then maybe we can just check next week again for the last video from Sage Publisher. So Sage Publisher is one of publishers, same thing within the science or Emerald Insight, Taylor and Francis. They accept different types of discipline of the article of research, and you'll be able to do that in the paper, say, for example, for particular research. And this is something very good, important for you all to listen from the methodology, from contribution, from the literature review, from analysis, from data, from a mixed method, for example, or qualitative research. So the last video, she is a postdoc, actually. She's doing is interview research and a mixed method. So the only problem is suddenly cut off the video due to maybe the connection from Sage. We just only listen only the first bit, which is the first 40 seconds. Okay. Now, can we just move on with the presentation? So we still have, what time is it? Salat Maghrib is the next half an hour, isn't it? So we still have 25 minutes.
Yes.
So can we just start the presentations? Who's doing the topic with the abstract? Bu Kokom, the rest. Because last week I saw that everybody in the breakout room, you did amazing discussion for the abstract. So can we start with Ibu Murni or Bu Riris, Mbak Putu? Who else attended last week in the breakout room?
Oke, maaf. Ada cucu telepon. Oke, teman-teman, silahkan yang presentasi. Katanya sudah siap dari setiap kelompok. Silahkan kemarin. Mbak Putu, sudah siap toh? Kemarin Mbak Nasfati.
Ayo, sudah mulai siap. Coba, don't worry, because I want to listen, then I can give you feedback.
Oke. Akan diberi feedback oleh ini. Silahkan.
Jangan malu-malu.
Apologies me.
Karena kita semua
Ferry.
belajar ya.
Cucu saya telepon.
Iya, aduh enak banget sudah punya cucu. Kapan saya punya cucu nanti?
Tiba-tiba mengganggu anak kecil.
Nggak apa-apa.
Oke, ini
Kokom,
Putu
santai
Diah.
saja.
Ya. Oke. Mohon maaf.
Oke, ini dari disiplin apa? Boga
Busana.
atau apa?
Busana.
Oke, silakan Bu Putu.
Sebentar. Apakah sudah terlihat, Prof?
Yes.
Sudah.
Ya, oke. Jadi untuk judul artikelnya sendiri adalah Development of Fashion Product from Marine Waste in Parangtritis Beach, Yogyakarta. So, my team baru mengerjakan sampai di introduction-nya aja, Prof. Jadi mungkin ini nanti ada masukan dalam bagian introduction-nya. So, these days, marine debris is a very urgent problem to research because the impact can threaten the survival and sustainability of aquatic biota. So, if this condition occur continuously, they can ruin the food chain and the health of people in coastal areas cannot be avoided. So, nets, food wraps, cigarette filters, bottles, resin pellets, and other debris can cause a serious impact on wildlife, habitat, and human safety. So plastic is the most common type of marine debris and a leading cause of problems for marine animals and birds. Marine debris, especially plastic waste, is widely recognized as a global environment problem. Yeah. So plastic
maybe Ibu Putu, saya stop dulu ya, karena kita bicara mengenai di abstrak. Coba cek di abstrak dulu. Untuk latar belakang, saya kira that's very good for your background. But can I just see your abstract first? Okay. Can you just tell us about your abstract and then I can give you feedback.
Yeah, so waste is a global problem that must be addressed, otherwise it will damage the marine ecosystem or marine biota. So marine litter is litter originating from land, water bodies and beach that flow into the sea, or litter originating from activities at sea. Meanwhile, plastic fibers are fibers that contain polymer compounds. So this plastic waste has become the largest component of marine debris. Coastal and marine areas are also very vulnerable to various threats of pollution. So plastic pollution against the environment has always been the main topic. However, with creative hands, plastic that was originally litter can be reprocessed access into goods that have usability. The main purpose for this research is to develop fashion products from marine waste and to determine the level of product interest. This article uses research and development method with the method of PPE, planning, production, and evaluation. So this is the abstract, Prof.
Thank you. So what I can see the abstract, yeah, for the first 3-4 sentences are very good. So you talk about the background, right? And then come to the with objective. Okay. So the main purpose, you can say that the research objective of this research is to develop fashion product from marine waste, right? And to assess the level of product interest.
Yes.
So you need to say that. And then you can say that this research use what method? Because since you're using research and development with PPE, still actually whether you would like to do with interview or survey, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then afterwards, you can say that what the results from your method. Okay, so you still have room to put, 3 or 4 sentences. One about data, how you collect the data, and number 2, actually in terms of the finding of your research. Okay, so you still have few hundred words, maybe not few hundred, I mean, maybe up to 50 words, 60 words. But anyway, this is very good starting point for your research. So well done, Ibu Putu. Congratulations. So I think for your article, you can continue after latar belakang, you can continue writing up the literature review, right? And then the method, okay? So well done, congratulations. So any group?
Ya, Mbak Naswati, kemarin udah siap ya? Coba Mbak, kemarin saya cek dulu.
Ini kok banyak menghilang ya, tadi 26, 27. Jadi
Iya ya.
sekitar 8. Ini nanti pada saat berikutnya ini saya akan kasih nilai ya Bu Kokom ya.
Iya
Jadi
betul.
mereka harus diberikan wajib. Karena mungkin apa karena malu atau karena mereka nggak ada waktu untuk kerjain. Tapi ini penting ya. Karena syarat mutlak untuk master atau PhD harus punya artikel. Jadi perlu belajar dari penulisan literatur, penulisan proposal, membagikan, menceritakan your research to other participants. Jadi ini merupakan ajang kita untuk learning together, ya. Jadi tidak perlu malu-malu untuk peserta. Dan juga, nah inilah untuk wadah kita untuk belajar, ya. Menerima koreksi dan berani untuk mengemukakan apapun the sharing yang tadi, dan saya kasih komentar, saya kasih masukan, improvement, right? So I think you don't need to be shy, nggak perlu malu, ya, perlu percaya diri, ya. Berikutnya silakan.
Mbak Indra, kemarin siap kan Mbak?
Apa mungkin waktunya kurang tepat ya bagi rekan-rekan ya? Ya.
Iya, ada kok,
Bu
Prof.
Murni. Bu Murni selalu datang ya, Bu Murni. Kita ini menjadi contoh yang bagus, Bu Murni, ya.
Meskipun saya sebenarnya terhambat di pemahaman penguasaan bahasa Inggris, Prof, tapi berusahalah ini untuk menampilkan abstrak yang sudah kami buat. Saya bersama Sri Indra Murni, Prof. Saya untuk yang bahasa Inggrisnya dikerjakan.
Nggak apa-apa bahasa Indonesia
ya,
dulu.
Bahasa
Yang
Indonesia
penting
dulu,
ada. Saya mau lihat alur pikirnya sama strukturnya. Kalau nanti itu bagus ya gampang tinggal diterjemahkan. Cuman
ini
ya
sudah
silakan.
ada 2 sih, Prof, untuk bahasa Indonesia dan bahasa Inggrisnya.
Silakan.
Saya ini di bahasa Indonesianya dulu, nggih, Prof.
Yes.
Biar saya lebih ini mudah untuk memahaminya. Apakah sudah kelihatan?
Ya.
Sudah muncul.
Oke, latar belakang, objektif, metode, hasil, dan kesimpulan. Nah, ini Bu Murni ya, dari judulnya apa ya? Bisa ini,
Oh ya,
silakan. Ya.
ini adalah literatur review, Prof, dari sunscreen, formula sunscreen untuk kosmetik topikal untuk anti penuaan. Jadi sunscreen formula for topical anti-aging for kosmetik.
Oke. Kalau saya lihat ya, Ibu Murni bagus ya menurut saya untuk strukturnya. Dari latar belakang, kemudian dari tujuan penelitian objektif, metodenya, hasil, kemudian dan juga kesimpulan. Kalau lihat dari ini bisa ditranslate dalam bahasa Inggris ya. Kalau saya lihat strukturnya ini very useful for Emerald Insight. Jadi Emerald Insight Publication itu bisa pakai sistem struktur abstrak seperti ini ya. Ini sekitar berapa kata ini? Kalau untuk abstraknya mungkin di bawah sekitar 100 ya, apa 150 kali kata.
Saya cek deh. 296, Prof.
Iya, tapi tidak termasuk kata kunci ya.
Oh iya.
Kalau di Inggris kan biasanya lebih itu.
Lebih rendah. Nanti kesimpulannya kayaknya tidak perlu cukup hasil. Kesimpulannya mungkin dibikin 2 kalimat, 3 kalimat juga boleh. Gitu loh.
Oh, jadi nanti kami ringkas untuk yang kesimpulan begitu nggih, Prof.
Ya, dan terjemahkan dalam bahasa Inggris. Mungkin kalau bisa 180.
Untuk bahasa Inggrisnya sebenarnya sudah ada, Prof.
Bisa bisa ditayangkan?
Ini seperti ini. Ini tadi Sri Indra yang buat untuk bahasa Inggrisnya karena dia bagus bahasa Inggrisnya, Prof. Jadi untuk ini kolaborasi saya bahasa Indonesianya.
Sudah belum? Kalau sudah
ini,
segera.
Prof.
Mana?
Ini sudah.
Nggak kelihatan, Mbak Bu Murni.
Belum,
Mungkin ditutup dulu dan di-share lagi.
Oh, baik-baik. Ini apakah sudah muncul, Prof?
Iya, betul. Nah, ini kurang lebih berapa tuh? Coba cek. Kalau konklusinya diringkas sedikit, mungkin sekitar
309.
309 ya. Apakah betul 309? Kayaknya kurang deh.
Ini benar ya? Ini ya.
Conclusionnya mungkin dibikin satu saja, Bu. 1 kalimat apa 2 kalimat. Kayaknya biasanya kalau sudah result ya sudah result kayaknya. Jadi cukup background sampai result aja sudah cukup ya. Oke. So berapa kata kalau dari jadi backgroundnya ada, objektifnya. Mungkin objektifnya seperti ini Bu Murni. Langsung aja. Jadi objektifnya itu apa tujuan penelitiannya? Jadi tujuan penelitiannya adalah to conduct systematic literature review, right? In order to prevent and overcome skin protection cosmetic, for example, such as for the sunscreen, ya. Nah, itu sudah cukup. Jadi metodologinya menggunakan systematic literature review, ya. Jadi menggunakan 1 kalimat cukup. Resultnya apa? Jadi kalau sudah punya itu sudah cukup. Biasanya kalau structure abstrak ya, minimum itu biasanya 150, maksimumnya biasanya 250 kata kalau structure abstrak. Oke.
Untuk bagian ini perlu saya tetap ini ya, Prof, untuk tetap
boleh.
saya jelaskan ya, yang ini ya.
Untuk itu karena result, yes.
Ya.
Karena kita bilang berapa jurnal artikel. Sip, very good.
Berarti ini nanti yang saya ringkas.
Pindah ringkas.
Ya.
Untuk result sih masih oke ya. Mungkin untuk objektifnya dibikin 1 kalimat, metodologi 1 kalimat, resultnya oke. Conclusionnya mungkin tidak perlu ya. Mungkin dibikin satu kalimat dan mungkin semuanya juga dibikin 250 kata.
Baik, Prof.
Ya,
Oke, terima kasih.
sama-sama.
Maaf untuk ini formulasi jurnal, kami kan cuma menggunakan 6 artikel. Apakah perlu kami tambah atau ini sudah cukup?
Oke, untuk systematic literature review biasanya artikel minimum 10 ya, Ibu Murni.
Oh iya.
Ya, kalau bisa
Berarti
dapat 10 ya.
ya, nanti kami tambahkan untuk
Ya, tapi ini
referensi.
very good starting point loh, Bu Murni. Terutama untuk landasan teori nanti studi pustaka sudah ada artikelnya.
Oh,
Jadi
iya.
untuk kalau saya lihat untuk memahami konsep tulis dan segala macam sudah mengerti, mungkin ditambahkan lagi aja artikelnya yang minimum Q1, Q2, Q3 ya. Kalau bisa minimum 10 artikel. Oke.
Baik, Prof.
You're welcome. Well done, congratulations. Nah, karena ini mau sholat maghrib ya untuk rekan-rekan yang ada di Indonesia, bisa nanti sholat maghrib kalau nanti Ibu Kokom diperkenankan ada breakout room lagi, atau nanti setelah sholat maghrib kalau ada yang mau presentasi saya bisa stay back little bit longer ya. Mungkin breaknya sekitar setengah jam kalau mau ya, kalau nggak mau juga nggak apa-apa. Tapi saya nanti sekitar jam 6.30 ya, setelah maghrib dan sholat, dan boleh come back dan boleh dilanjutkan presentasi untuk yang belum ya, dan yang lain boleh dengar ya. Tapi tolong kasih tahu, saya akan standby, saya akan balik lagi di setengah jam lagi ya.
Iya. Oke, teman-teman yang kewirausahaan jadi mau presentasi? Mbak Ros ada nggak? Mbak Ros katanya siap. Apa ya Bu? Bu Riris gimana? Siap nggak?
Kemarin sudah kami buat, Ibu. Akan disampaikan oleh Bu Titi.
Oh, Bu Titi. Oke. Ini kita mau break dulu. Mungkin nanti dilanjut 6:30 gitu ya. Tapi mungkin hanya berapa. Tapi saya tanya dulu. Bu Titi siap ya. Kemudian Bu dari Boga, Bu Nasfati.
Iya, Ibu, siap.
Oh, siap.
Siap, bagus.
Oke, kalau gitu kita break berapa?
30 menit cukup
30
ya?
menit ya, 30 menit mungkin nanti dilanjut 30 menit cukup ya?
Iya.
Karena selanjutnya ada kuliah lagi mungkin mereka.
Oke, nggak apa-apa Bu Kokom.
Baik, terima kasih. Silahkan selamat sholat maghrib dulu. Ya, kita kita akhiri dulu ya. Selamat untuk ini. Nanti Mbak Nasfati, Bu Titi siap nggak? Ya, tinggal 2 lagi.
6:30 nggih, Prof, berarti kita kembali.
Ya, 6:30 ya.
Nggih, baik, Prof.
Ya, baik. Ya. Baik, selamat sore. Silahkan untuk melakukan aktivitas sholat dulu. Makasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Apakah sudah bisa terlihat, Prof?
Iya.
Berikut abstrak kelompok kami, yaitu kelompok kewirausahaan dengan judul Hubungan Antara Jiwa Kewirausahaan pada Generasi Z dengan Cara Pandang Keluarga Terhadap Wirausaha Sebagai Sebuah Profesi. In the beginning, we write about the aim our research. Penelitian ini bertujuan untuk mengetahui seberapa besar pengaruh cara pandang keluarga terhadap kemauan berwira swasta pada generasi Z. And the kalimat selanjutnya adalah latar belakang. Jiwa kewirausahaan merupakan salah satu fondasi terpenting yang harus dimiliki oleh seseorang yang akan berwirausaha. Hal ini penting karena seseorang yang memiliki jiwa kewirausahaan, maka orang tersebut akan lebih kuat dan tangguh dalam menghadapi naik turun dari perjalanan sebuah usaha. Waktu terbaik dalam menanamkan jiwa kewirausahaan adalah sejak dini. Karena penanaman jiwa kewirausahaan sejak dini akan membuat seseorang lebih kritis dan kreatif.
Dengan adanya minat generasi Z dalam berwirausaha, maka akan memberikan angin segar dalam pertumbuhan sektor usaha, terutama sektor usaha kreatif. Akan tetapi, cara pandang orang tua masih kurang mendukung jika anak mereka memilih untuk berwirausaha. Para orang tua lebih menginginkan anak-anak mereka menjadi pegawai perusahaan atau pegawai negeri. Lingkungan seseorang memiliki pengaruh yang sangat besar terhadap perilaku orang tersebut. Keputusan yang diambil atas suatu pilihan sering berdasarkan pertimbangan subjektif pihak lain, sehingga tindakan yang diambil juga berdasarkan pendapat dari pihak lain. Penelitian ini menggunakan metode penelitian kualitatif deskriptif, di mana kelompok sampel pertama adalah dalam penelitian adalah generasi Z yang memutuskan untuk berprofesi sebagai seorang wirausaha. Dan kelompok sampel kedua adalah orang tua yang memiliki anak pada rentang usia 20 sampai 28 tahun. Metode pengumpulan data dengan menggunakan kuesioner dan wawancara. Hasil penelitian tersebut diharapkan dapat terlihat sejauh mana dukungan orang tua terhadap pengambilan keputusan dari generasi Z yang memilih untuk bekerja sebagai wirausaha. Ini abstrak kami yang berbahasa Indonesia, Prof. Halaman selanjutnya adalah abstrak kami dalam bahasa Inggris. Saya masih ragu tentang jiwa kewirausahaan in English. Di sini kami menuliskan entrepreneurial spirit. Is it true, Prof?
It's a good question. Entrepreneur spirit. So first of all, Ibu Titi, well done, congratulations. Kalau dilihat dari abstrak, memang itu straight to the point ya. Jadi tujuan penelitiannya itu untuk explore ya. Jadi bukan hanya determination. Jadi to explore, the influence of the family perspective has on the entrepreneur. I think kalau entrepreneur spirit itu kalau di dalam bahasa akademik ya, kalau kita bicara entrepreneur spirit itu takutnya mereka, wah spirit ngeri nih mereka kan. Jadi kalau kita bicara mengenai entrepreneur itu mungkin karena ini jiwa entrepreneur ya. Jadi entrepreneur approach gitu aja maksud saya. Jadi bukan hanya spirit, entrepreneur approach gitu kan. Atau nanti coba dicek ya di dalam magazine entrepreneur yang tahu saya mungkin jangan pakai kata spirit gitu. Jadi pengaruh dari untuk generasi Z-nya ini kan. Nah, jadi kalau nanti dicek aja entrepreneur spirit itu ada nggak di literatur review? Itu yang kedua, Ibu Titi. Kalau ada, ya coba di-download aja papernya yang mengatakan entrepreneurship spirit, gitu.
Ya.
Jadi kalau ada ya kita pakai gitu terminologi itu. Tapi kalau enggak ya mungkin kita cari kira-kira kata yang sesuai, ya. Oke. Kalau dilihat, this is important because, jadi boleh juga diceritakan serta tujuan penelitian diceritakan. Cuman hanya serta tujuan penelitian ini cukup panjang ya, diceritakan latar belakang, kemudian pentingnya influence ini. Jadi kalau bisa nggak perlu panjang, cukup kira-kira 50-75 kata aja setelah tujuan penelitian. Jadi kalau saya setuju, jadi menggunakan mixed method, menggunakan survei dan wawancara, interview, ya. Kemudian ini nanti dicek juga, mungkin setelah satu paragrafnya dibicara mengenai results, karena ini kan masih belum dilakukan pengumpulan data.
Ya.
Mungkin satu paragraf terakhir disisikan results atau finding, ya. Tapi overall you doing very good job, Ibu Titi, untuk topik entrepreneur, untuk generation Z. So well done, Ibu Titi. Apakah ada yang lain yang mau nambahkan dari grup entrepreneur? Nggak ada.
Another word, entrepreneurship as a profession, is it true, Prof?
Now, this is much better. Entrepreneur as a profession. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Prof. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you so much, Mbak Titi. The next one is siapa berikutnya?
Mbak Nasfati.
Nasfati Iktarasti.
Saya dari tim Boga, izin share screen.
Ya, silakan.
Apakah sudah terlihat, Prof, tampilan?
Yes, yes.
Ya, jadi kami di sini akan menampilkan 2 abstrak. Yang pertama mengenai penelitian kualitatif dengan judul Pendap as a Bengkulu Culinary Treasure, yang terdiri dari background dan objektif, kemudian ada methods, result, conclusion, dan keywords. Untuk background and objektifnya, Pendap is a fish bed food that is cooked for 8 hours. Currently, Pendap is one of the culinary heritage of the Bengkulu region. However, of the Pendap is still rarely studied. The study aims to determine Pendap as a culinary treasure typical of Bengkulu. This study use a qualitative research design with research subject are Pendap, producer, and owners. Untuk methodsnya, of typical Bengkulu restaurant, sorry Prof, untuk metodenya dimulai dari this study use a qualitative research. Untuk data collection-nya menggunakan observasi, interviews, and documentation technique. Data analysis use an interactive analysis model consisting of data collection and conclusion. Kemudian untuk result-nya, the results show that Pendap has existed since 1 century ago and is passed down from generation to generation and is often presented in community event. Pendap has a uniqueness that can be seen from the cooking process, which is carried out from 8 hours and has become part of Bengkulu cuisine. Pendap is successfully traded as a Bengkulu typical side dish because it can last for 2 days without preservative and for 2 weeks if packaged using a vacuum. Kemudian conclusion-nya, the result of this study are expected to increase the understanding of the people who are involved in the Bengkulu traditional culinary world to pay more attention and know about local wisdom because there are still few studies that discuss the related topics. Kemudian untuk keywordnya, di sini saya menggunakan 3. Yang pertama Pendap, lalu ada local cuisine dan juga Bengkulu. Baik, saya lanjutkan ke abstrak yang kedua. Untuk abstrak yang kedua ini terkait dengan penelitian tesis saya, tetapi masih dalam bentuk proposal. Jadi dimulai dari bab 1 sampai bab 3. Di sini saya buat abstraknya. Untuk judulnya, The Influence of Industrial Work Practice on Employability Skill at Culinary Department Vocational High School in Daerah Istimewa Yogyakarta. Yang pertama, background and objektifnya, the problem of unemployment for vocational high school graduate remain a problem that has not been resolved to date. The reason for this is due to the lack of skilled graduate in the thing needed in the industrial world. This study aims to determine first the effect of apprenticeship of the employability skill aspect of problem solving skill, and second the effect of apprenticeship of the employability skill aspect of communication skill, the effect of apprenticeship on the employability skill aspect of working skill in groups, the influence of apprenticeship on employability skill aspect of skill into the initiative and work at vocational high school, majoring in culinary program in daerah istimewa Yogyakarta. Kemudian untuk methods-nya di study use a quantitative approach. The population in the study, namely class 11, 12 student
Kelas 3 SMA ya?
Iya, Prof.
Okay.
Of vocational high school, majoring in culinary planning in daerah istimewa Yogyakarta. Kemudian untuk teknik pengambilan sampelnya, use the proportional cluster random sampling technique. Data collection technique use test for internship value, variables, kemudian employability skill in aspect of communication skill, group, work skill, problem solving skill, and skill in taking initiative and trying. Prerequisite test analysis using normality test, linearity test, hypothesis testing, simple linear regression analysis, correlation coefficient of determination. The variable in this study are a description of industrial work practice, employability skill in the aspect of communication skill, group work skill, problem solving skill, and skill in taking initiative and doing business. Kemudian untuk data analisisnya use descriptive analysis. Kemudian keywords-nya di sini saya menggunakan 5 keywords. Yang pertama ada employability skill, lalu ada field industrial practice atau prakerin, kemudian ada vocational high school education, culinary, dan daerah istimewa Yogyakarta. Ya, kira-kira seperti itu, Prof.
Thank you, Bu Nastati. Yeah, untuk abstract, the second abstract, so I can see the title and your thesis is very good about employability skill. So in your objective and the background, it's a very good to see the 2 sentences about the background and then, 2 sentences for objective. Okay, it's so clear. Now, in terms of the methods, you use a quantitative approach. So last sentence, you say that data analysis use descriptive. It's a little bit confused because you mentioned about regression, you mentioned about coefficient of correlation and coefficient of determination. Those are the method to analyze your data. Okay, so descriptive statistic or analysis is the lowest level. Okay, so before you do the regression, all those stuff in the coefficient correlation, we start with the descriptive statistics. Okay, so I think in the last sentence, data analysis use descriptive analysis, you can remove. Okay, so in terms of the variable, no problem. Okay, now in terms of data, you use in survey and using random sampling, and then you mentioned about class 12, and you need to mention that in your article, what does it mean SMK? Okay, and you need to explain what is the DIY, because if you have a paper article, you mention DIY, and people say that what is that? They're struggling to find the location, but you mentioned maybe Yogyakarta, or one of the locate in Indonesia, right? So you just say that. Okay, so well done for this abstract 2. Now with the extract 1 with PENDAP, it's good to see a culinary, right? So you need to explain a little bit what's Bengkulu. You mentioned like different types of culinary in Bengkulu, right? So to promote this, it's good to see that. Yeah. So I think untuk Ibu Nastati, abstract 1 looking good, right? So keep doing good work for the abstract 1 and abstract 2. Okay. Okay, well done. Anything else? I think it's only 2 group, yeah. Okay, so
Thank you very much, Prof.
you're welcome, Ibu Nasfati. Yeah. Okay, so next week, before we closing, just give me 1 minute before we closing. So next week is the final week. So I just encourage everybody need to attend, because next week is pretty much summary and reflection. And then we need, maybe Ibu Kokom can help me to send me the list of the person, including email and the WhatsApp. So maybe this is, jadi ini merupakan sarana buat kita, jadi untuk kedepannya bukan, this is not the first and the last, ya, Bu Kokom.
Okay. Yes,
Jadi so we need to do more research. Jadi banyak juga, mungkin di sini kan banyak juga guru-guru, mungkin para praktisi, ya. Jadi siapa tahu mereka itu mau bikin paper, mau minta butuh promotor, review, promotor dari luar, nanti saya bantu Ibu Kokom, ya.
Baik, terima
saya
kasih.
bantu untuk progdinya.
Iya.
Jadi seperti contoh kayak Undip, jadi saya jalani sebagai visiting, kayak UNS di Solo, ya. Nanti setelah itu ada rekan-rekan yang butuh, mumpung saya juga jago di bidangnya, mungkin ada kontribusi ke penelitiannya, jadi sebagai pembimbing eksternal, ya, atau menguji, juga sekaligus menguji, ya. Jadi kan rekan-rekan sudah terbiasa sama saya, sudah hampir 6 minggu, 7 minggu sudah kenal sama saya.
Iya, setengah semester lebih.
Iya, jadi ibaratnya ini bukan, is not the last, ya. The first is not the last, but the thing is, it is good, like, jadi everybody in this room, you can get my email, you can get my WhatsApps, if you have problem. Seperti Ibu Kokom juga sama, seperti Ibu Sulastri dari Unsri, kemudian Ibu Indri dari Erlangga. Mereka Kaprogdi, ya, untuk ilmu ekonomi. Mereka kalau ada paper, baru kemarin dikirim Q1, jadi ada untuk bikin tulis paper bersama, ya. Jadi kita kalau ada problem, ada pertanyaan, jadi silakan itu Bu Kokom, ya. Jadi rekan-rekan, ya, dan dia di UNY di Jogja. Jadi ini merupakan objektif saya juga untuk UNY. Jadi saya mementor rekan-rekan sekalian juga baru bisa tesisnya selesai, dan UNY juga progdinya bagus, ya. Jadi world class ranking university juga, ya, peringkat kualitas untuk jurnal bereputasi, ya. Jadi rekan-rekan bisa ke sana, bisa minimal Q2, Q3 lah, ya. Oke, kalau papernya bagus bisa Q1. Oke, terima kasih untuk hari ini. Jadi mohon maaf ya mengganggu juga, bisa ditambah waktunya. Jadi minggu depan untuk session terakhir mohon semua hadir, ya. Dan juga tolong dipersiapkan pertanyaannya, dan kita foto bersama juga nanti.
Oke, silahkan foto bersama untuk ini apa, on cam.
Halo everybody. Kalau Ibu Murni selalu standby, Bu Murni. Ya,
ini
Bu
ada
Murni.
teman-teman yang di kampus tadi itu kayak Mbak Buros, Bu Manda katanya
ya.
Lampunya mati. Tiba-tiba terpental semua.
Ibu Riris juga selalu ada nih, Bu Riris, ya. Webcamnya ada. Ya, Bu Titi, ya. Bu Titi ada di mana? Bu Titi ada di kampus, Bu?
Sudah di rumah, Bro.
Oke, di rumah, ya. Sudah makan gudeg, ya? Sudah makan apa nih?
Ini jago masak ini Bu Titi ini.
Waduh, mungkin saya kok ke Jogja, ya. Mungkin
Iya.
saya kangen nih Bu Kokom, makanan Indonesia nih.
Iya, iya. Baik, terima kasih. Ayo Mbak Sarah, Mbak Sania.
Mbak Sarah, Mbak Sani, ya, Mbak Dina.
Mbak Agnes. Mbak Eti.
Ya. Saya suka nih koleksi foto, jadi saya suka foto-foto, ya.
Terima kasih. Ini Prof. Ferry itu sangat baik ini ya, luar biasa. sangat memaklumi segala keterbatasan kita semua. Baik, terima kasih. Kita foto dulu ya. 1, 2, 3. Oke. Ada 1 atau mana ini? Bentar. Ya. Mana 1 lagi? Sebentar. Nih kok. Ya. Aduh. Nah. Ini yang jago moto tuh Mbak Dani. Coba Mbak Dani. Oke. Oke, terima kasih. Selamat malam semuanya.
Terima kasih. Selamat malam.
Mungkin minggu depan terakhir ya kita mendengar terakhir untuk tahun ini. Semoga masih ada yang lain.
Masih ada. Nanti kalau saya main ke Indonesia, ke Jogja deh.
Iya.
Ketemu rekan-rekan semuanya.
Ya,
terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Prof, Ibu.